going to do a video on chord structures. Just it's something that a lot of people, even guitarists that have been playing for years and that sort of thing, have trouble getting their head around. This will cover keyboards too, as long as you know your scales. I've posted videos for guitar and bass players on major and minor scales. Okay, so these numbers that you see here represent the degrees of those scales. So this is the major scale, and that is the minor scale. I haven't written the 8s at the end because they're the same as the 1, so we don't need those at the moment. So you'll see the minor scale has got a flat sign next to the 3, the 6 and the 7, because if you flatten that 3, that 6 and that 7, you end up with a minor scale. Cool, but I've written them both out just for ease of referral, basically. Cool, so I'm going to chuck up a bunch of chords. I'll just use random letters. So we'll start off with A. Cool, that could be a B chord or a G chord, F chord or an E chord. Doesn't really matter because we're talking about what degree of the scale that is made up of. So in this case, because we're talking about an A, we would be working with an A major scale, and A would be our 1. Cool. So just a straight out chord like that you see written just a letter, is made up of 1, 3, and 5 out of that major scale. Cool. So that's an A major chord. It doesn't say that it's major, it doesn't have to. If it doesn't say that it's anything else, it's automatically a major chord. Cool? So that's nice and easy. If we then saw an M, little m next to that, making it A minor, real simple, 1, 3, and 5 out of our minor scale. So you'll see there, the only difference is the 3rd is flattened. Okay, so if you've learnt bar chords or any guitar chords, really, you'll notice that you're only changing one note to change from a major chord to a minor chord, and that's why, because we're not involving the 6 and 7 in that chord. Cool, so those are the simple ones, right? Let's say, actually let's just tackle a straight 7 first. So let's say that said A7. Cool. This is where some people start to get a little bit confused because it's not a minor chord, so you'd think it would make sense just to chuck in that 7, but that's not the 7 that's used. It's actually this 7 here. Okay, so it's actually a flat 7 added to that 1, 3, and 5. Cool, so it's a standard major chord, but the 7 in it is actually a flat 7. Okay, it's not this major 7 here. Cool. If you need to know like the spacing in between these and all that, go and check out my video on major and minor scales. Major is easy: tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Cool. So there's a semitone before that goes back to the 1 again, and then minor scale, flat 3, flat 6, flat 7. Cool. So just remember, if you see just a straight A7 or B7 or E7, whatever chord it is, it's 1, 3, and 5. It's just a major chord, but it has a flat 7 added to it. Cool. So then let's say we had A minor 7. Cool, because these are the most common ones that you'll see, so we'll start with those, why not, right? Cool, so it's a minor chord, so 1, 3, and 5 of our minor scale, and again, that same 7. Okay, so that one makes sense. Cool, let's say we see this. M, A, 7. Cool. So that is not A minor A7. Okay, the little MA stands for major. Okay, so this is now A major 7. And what that means is, again, 1, 3, and 5, but now we're going to use that 7 instead of this one. So if it doesn't determine what 7 it is, then it's a flat 7 automatically. Okay, but if it determines it as a major 7, then it's this 7 here that we use. Cool. And then if you had an A minor major 7, sometimes it'll actually have a J in it as well, in that case, to make it simpler, but or you'll see the lettering is just a different size. Then that is an A minor but with a major 7. Okay, so instead of the flat 7, it's got a major 7. Cool. So we'll have a quick look at 5s, because you will see written a flat 5, so you might have A minor flat 5. You might have another chord, so you might have a minor 7 flat 5. It's often added into other chords. Sharp 5 you don't generally see written in a chord as such. That would normally be in an augmented chord that we will look at later on. Okay, so we'll just run with these other numbers for a minute. So let's tackle 9. So we'll change now to a B. Okay, so now we're working with a B scale. Not that it matters because we're not talking about what any of the notes are. Let's say we saw B9. Now this is a big one. This is I've actually, because I work with youth and music, and this is one that actually their school teachers have taught them the wrong thing on this one. So there's a lot of people out there that get this one wrong. So what you'll hear people say is that a 9 is a 2 up an octave. So actually, just before we jump into that, let's look at it too. Let's say that was a B2. Okay. There are different ways that you'll see that written. So you might have B. Let's actually look at this. You'll see this chord a lot. C add 2. Okay, or C plus 2, whatever, because that's that G-shaped chord where they will move down a string, used all the time, just because it's an easy substitute for C, really. Okay, so that's a C chord, so that's a C chord 1, 3, and 5 with a 2 added to it. Okay, hence C add 2. Another chord you'll see would be C sus 2. Okay, and what that is going to do is it's going to substitute the 2, so it might not have a 3 in it. Okay, just for that slight difference on that one. Cool. So when we look at a 9, we'll use C now just while it's there. So if you see C9, people think that is a C add 2, but the 2 is played an octave higher. Okay, that's not quite right, because who decides which octave we're talking in? And whichever octave you play a note in, the note is still the same note, right? So Any number that you see above 7 can only exist in the presence of a 7. Okay, so C9 is actually a C7. Just get rid of these. C7, so it's got 1, 3, and 5, plus our flat 7, plus a 2. Okay, so 7 plus 2 equals 9. Cool, so if that was an 11, C11, cool, so remember we can only get a number above 7 in the presence of a 7, so we've still got our C7 chord, okay, but now the number that we're going to add to 7 is 4, okay, so 7 plus 4 is 11, right, and so on and so forth. So if we added a 6 to it, then 7 plus 6 is 13, hence C13. Cool. So, or let's say we had C major 9. Okay. So the 2 is the same, and so that's not affected, is it? Because that's the same in both scales. So what's affected is our 7. So it's going to be a major 7, get rid of that 6, major 7 with a 2 added to it. Cool, makes sense, and so on and so forth, major 11, major 13. So looking at augmented and diminished chords now, we'll start with augmented first. So an augmented chord, whatever you do, is made up of 2 major third intervals, one after the other. So the first one's easy because it's 1 and 3. Okay, if you do the same interval, when we talk about interval, we're talking about the space between the notes, or the number of semitones between the notes. You'll actually end up with a sharp 5. Okay, so the note, the semitone up from the 5, will be in there, and then if you do that again, then you end up with an 8, which is a 1. So that doesn't really matter. But the reason I say that is because in the diminished, you can do that again as well. So diminished is the same concept, but in the minor scale here. So minor third interval, and then another minor third interval will give you that flat 5 there. Cool. And then if you do that again, you'd end up with what's called a double flat 7. Okay, that's actually just the same note as a 6. Okay, but that would be a full diminished chord, whereas that version is technically a half diminished chord. Okay, but yeah, it's more commonly seen, and it's just referred to as diminished most of the time. Cool. But a full diminished is that double flat 7, which is the same note as a 6 of the major scale would be. Cool. The other way that you'll see that half diminished chord written is minor 7 flat 5. So we have, let's chuck that one in there. Okay, so that looks like a whole lot of writing, but it's an A flat. I decided to chuck a flat chord in there because chords themselves that we start with on our one are still sharps and flats. So don't forget that that's in there with new reading as well. So that's an A flat minor. So that's our A flat as our 1. We've got a minor chord, so we've got the 3 and the 5. But the 5 is actually flattened, and it's a minor 7. So we've actually got that in there as well. Okay? Yeah. Cool. And then, I mean, you could have something full on like minor, A flat minor, major 7, flat 5, or whatever. Yeah. But you see, by doing it this way, by referring to the scale degrees, it makes it a lot simpler to get your head around chords, because then you apply the principle to every chord instead of going through a chord book and trying to learn 100 different shapes, or probably 1,000 different shapes by the time you play it in all different places up the neck. If you know what it's made up of, what each chord is made up of, then you can find chords in new places. You can work out how to play chords when you see it written down. If you're writing music and you find this cool chord that sounds really cool but you don't know what to call it, this stuff gives you somewhere to go with that. So yeah, I hope that's been helpful. I'm not sure if I've missed anything out, and I'll probably think of it at midnight tonight. But anyway, that'll give you a whole bunch of stuff. So cool.